This week saw the brief return of load shedding after Eskom experienced some technical challenges. In a media briefing, the electricity minister reiterated that there was no sabotage connected to the return of power cuts. And by Wednesday, blackouts were suspended. Some quarters have argued that Eskom has been misleading South Africans about the true state of their power system. To discuss this, I'm now joined by Mathew Cruise, who's an energy expert. Mathew, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, the Daily Maverick penned an article where it spoke to 3 energy experts who suggested that Eskom might have not been entirely frank with South Africans with regards to the state of our power systems. One of the analysts actually went on to say there were symptoms that were heading towards load shedding about a week before the load shedding happened. To your knowledge, what would those symptoms have been?
Yes, well, thank you for having me, and hello to your viewers. So this is something that I've also been highlighting from my side amongst the energy experts that have been indicating that things are not that okay at Eskom, that Eskom has been on the border of load shedding for actually the last 3 months. So some of the symptoms that we can look at that would tell us that it's on the limit is looking at the energy availability factor from the power stations and noting that they're sitting at below 60% for the last 3 months, where their target was to be above 65% by the end of the year, including all of the planned maintenance that was meant to happen over summer that is termed short-term pain for long-term gain by the electricity minister. So the poor performance of the power stations is one indicator, and then also the firing of diesel turbines to mitigate up to stage 2 and stage 3 load shedding by just using diesel alone. This had started taking place in December, and I just went to go take a look at when I had first announced this to the market, and I see on my LinkedIn that on the 1st of January, I'd mentioned that we are currently firing 2 to 3 stages of load shedding using diesel, which is irregular. You wouldn't usually want to be doing that because diesel is about 10 times more expensive than coal. So Eskom avoids using diesel if it can, and the fact that they were firing 2 to 3 stages of load shedding actually over the past 3 months has indicated that they have not been able to meet the electricity demand with their coal power stations alone, that they've had to use diesel. And this is now what took place both when load shedding returned and now. So leading up to the 31st of January, we had 5 days of diesel being fired of up to stage 3 load shedding. And again, now we had 5 days of up to stage 3 load shedding being mitigated from diesel. And then we had further failures at power stations that dipped us into stage 6.
But I mean, a week ago, the Eskom spokesperson announced that compared to last year, this time we're using significantly much less diesel than we were a year ago.
Yes, there is a narrative that I have seen coming from Eskom, and having worked there for 11 years myself at the start of my career, I noticed that whenever we would give commentary to media, that it would always be like almost the best possible picture that we were portraying, or like a sugar-coated picture that we would portray. And also an example of the sugar-coating is over the last year, when we've had 300 days without load shedding, even there we would see that there would be up to stage 2 and 3 load shedding mitigated from diesel. So it is aspects of Eskom where they are kind of in a tough place where they have to kind of provide confidence to the markets, provide confidence to the nation that everything's fine while trying to sort out everything in the back end. But unfortunately, things in the back end are not okay. And primarily, it's that these power stations that we have are aging and they're very old. So the average age is 42 years. The 5 oldest power stations are 55 years old, and that's at their limits of the end of life. So typically, power station is commissioned to last 40 years, and then it gets a 15-year life extension to 55 years. And now these power stations are kind of bringing themselves offline, where they're slowly breaking down. And this is happening in the context where Eskom's been told to fix load shedding and fix the energy crisis, and that load shedding should be a thing of the past by the end of 2024. So they've been told, perform this way. Here's your performance metrics. Have no load shedding and make sure everything's fine. But when it comes to what's actually taking place, they're not able to perform, but they have to say that things are fine on the front end because they have to try and make it look like things are okay in terms of their performance.
So one of the analysts, Clyde Mallison, when speaking to the Daily Maverick, said that there were a number of things that he had spotted in terms of trends, and that Eskom was running diesel not just at peak times, but sometimes throughout the night and on one or two occasions. And about halfway December, that stopped. But then again, a little later on, we started burning diesel on New Year's Day, and not just at peak times, but pretty much 24/7. Could that have been an indicator that the two load shedding experiences that we had in January and February were certainly on the cards, and that Eskom was not as surprised as they made it out to be?
Yeah, so I kind of feel sorry for Eskom and the way that they have to present themselves to media, because they don't really give us the direct. They give us the direct causes for load shedding, but they don't give us the root cause. So they'll say this power station came down and then that power station came down, so therefore we have load shedding. But they won't say over the last 3 months, actually our EAF has been really low and we've been struggling to meet the demand, and so therefore we had to fire diesel. So those indicating things that Clyde, we were very much aligned in what we're seeing, because we both look at the same data that's publicly available from Eskom. We've both been seeing that Eskom struggling, they're firing a lot of diesel, and it just takes a perfect storm, as the electricity minister terms it, of there being almost no wind. There was no wind power available because there was low pressure in the middle of the country, which led to a kind of very low wind condition. Usually we would have about 2 stages of load shedding mitigated by wind, but there was no wind during the time that we had load shedding now, and that was a contributory factor. And apart from that, there had been indicators that load shedding is on the cards again, with a number of commentators, including myself, saying that we project load shedding to return in Q1 in the first 3 months of this year. Unfortunately, even though it's not good for the economy or for the country, we can just see it in the trends and in the data from Eskom's side, that they don't give the story themselves, but we can analyze the data and we can see that it's coming.
But I mean, Mathew, if they've given us over 300 days of reprieve, if it's factually true that they've been burning less diesel, why would they still be coy with South Africans if they do hit a snag?
So yeah, in terms of factually true that they're burning less diesel, this brings to mind the phrase, the devil is in the details. And it's easy to smooth over performance by using aggregation or using averages. So they said, oh, we saved 16 billion rand on diesel compared to last year. But remember last year, when that's now, they were talking about over 2024, they've saved 16 billion rand compared to 2023. 2023, we're in the peak of the energy crisis, mitigating up to stage 8 and stage 10 load shedding with diesel. So we were like in an emergency needing to fire diesel. And then we, as a result, are now comparing a year 2024 to the previous year and saying we're saving money, but actually we're still peaking up to stage 3 load shedding when it's needed for up to a week at a time. And then just over the 3 months or the 6 months that they're reporting, they're saying, oh, but compared to last year, we actually saved money. So it's this kind of sugarcoating aspect from Eskom's side that they are having to do this. And that's why, if they talk about themselves, it's never anything negative. Like the first time we heard them mention state capture was in their latest financial report, saying this is why we need an increase on our price of electricity, because we had state capture. That's the first time I've ever heard Eskom ever mutter the word state capture, even though like people inside Eskom knew it was happening for the entire time that it was happening. So in terms of that, they don't get to actually be honest and like open with the public about what's going on. They have to give like the best possible picture and a sugar-coated picture from their side.
Having worked at Eskom for the number of years that you mentioned, and in hindsight, looking at how Eskom is handling the situation currently, do you think it is in the best interest of the consumer for them to be coy and not necessarily give as much information as they have been, or have they not been? What impact does this have on the ordinary South African when they would know this information well in advance?
Yes, it's a very good insights from your side. If they had to have been honest about how things are actually going, and with some additional information that if I was sitting in Eskom, I would provide to the marketplace now, I'd say we received 254 billion rand in 2022 in order to try and avoid this energy crisis. We started using the money to fix our boiler tube leaks, which caused the majority of our power outages at the power stations. Those tube leaks, so we've replaced the tubes. Those tube leak repairs usually last about 1.5 to 2 years. So therefore, we can expect in about 2 years, a year and a half, for load shedding to return. If they had to have told us that a year and a half or 2 years ago, then people would have then even further gone and removed their need to have Eskom by getting solar and battery systems. So from their side, they're kind of like not really being that open, because I suspect one of the impacts of them being very open and transparent about what's going on inside Eskom is that people realize that things are going to get worse going forward over the next 3 years regarding Eskom's supply, while they've already like pretty much doubled the price of electricity over the last 5 years. And so then like companies that I work for, like Empower, would be approached for providing solar and battery systems to businesses and households in order to remove their dependence on Eskom. And as that happens, then their revenue declines even further. And they're saying, oh, we're not able to collect our revenue from municipalities and from our direct customers, so we need these tariffs to increase the whole time. And people realizing that Eskom is going to fail even more and going solar, which is currently like half the price of what Eskom's charging, then further it accelerates this death spiral that they find themselves in, where they're continually trying to increase the price of electricity, and then people are removing their need from Eskom, even with municipalities just disconnecting and going solar and batteries themselves. So that's one of the things that I can think about of why they would want to provide a sugar-coated picture, to try and keep the customers that they have and not have them leave, realizing that Eskom is going to be failing going forward over the next 3 years.
So lastly, Mathew, are you saying that with the number of repairs that we've seen happening at Eskom, the increase in the energy availability factor, the minister saying that we are almost out of the woods, we actually are not?
Yes, so once again, like when you look at the EAF, for example, they'll say, oh, we had an average of 64% over the last 12 months, but they'll say like, they'll report that from November backwards. But they won't say, oh, and the last 3 months have been under 60%. So we did get up to 70% with our EAF. There was multiple times we did that. But over the last 3 months, it's been below 60%. And the target is 70% for this year. It was 65% for last year. They were meant to end on 65%, and they've now sat under 60% for 3 months. So that's like, for me, a clear sign that they're not able to get up to where they're meant to be. And these boiler tube leaks that were replaced, the boiler tubes that were replaced and replacing the tube leaks that were taking place a year and a half, 2 years ago, are now starting to surface again. And we're starting to have degradation in terms of our ability to generate power as a nation.
All right, Mathew Cruise, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise this evening. That's Mathew Cruise, an energy expert, speaking to us as to why Eskom has been coy with South Africans with regards to the latest bout of load shedding.